Good evening. I am the Maven of the Eventide, and welcome to Vampire Reviews. Whew. Oh, this heat wave. Oh, times are tough for a creature of darkness. Oh, I better take this off. Is it working? So 2009 was a pretty good year for vampire movies, at least quantity-wise. The vampire boom was upon us. Hugely thanks to Twilight's success in 2008, of course. But as much as people love to hate on Twilight for not portraying real vampires, you have to give it credit for inspiring Hollywood to pump out the creatures of the night en masse. We went from getting only 1 or 2 vampire films a year max to 5 in 2009, and then 4 more in 2010. And right smack in the middle of this vampire deluge, at the turn of the new year, came the movie Daybreakers. It's a futuristic dark sci-fi twist on vampires that Variety called The Matrix meets 28 Days Later. Its sinister and horrific vampires were so completely the opposite of Twilight's glamorous romantic approach that most people took the film to be actively responding to Twilightification, to do real vampires right again, even though vampires aren't real. But Daybreakers was actually acquired by Lionsgate way back in 2004, before the first Twilight book even came out. It was written and directed by the Spearig brothers, up-and-coming Australian filmmakers who'd gained a cult following for their first 2003 campy zombie film, Undead. Lionsgate sat on the Daybreakers script for a few years, but then, when they saw vampire mania exploding over the world, they worked strategically to release it right after the second Twilight film. Usually, movies that come out in January are expected to bomb, right? But Lionsgate knew what they were doing, banking on the tide of Twilight controversial opinion havers riding off of New Moon's holiday season release. And Daybreakers actually did really well at the box office for a low-budget Ozploitation film released in a dump month, despite how decade-too-late wannabe Matrixy its sci-fi action aesthetic and blue-green filters are. As far as vampires go, Daybreakers does have a rather fresh-feeling take and an insightful socio-political message. It's kept pretty shallow in favor of gunfights, gore, and car chases, but it's there. There are only 2 female characters in the movie, and they never meet each other. One's a hyper-competent action girl love interest cardboard cutout, and the other is the villain's rebellious daughter who gets killed off to show us how evil he is. But at least neither of them are that sexualized lady vampire stereotype we're so used to. For a dude-tastic action film that doesn't break the Bechdel test, could have been a lot worse. In the far distant future of the year 2019, the world has changed. 10 years prior, a single bat somehow started an outbreak of vampirism. You go, little bat! And since it only takes 1 bite from a vampire here to turn people into immortal creatures of the night, the condition spread like zombies. We're led to believe that most people in this world chose to become vampires. Because who wouldn't? Well, a few people wouldn't. Like this guy, our protagonist, Ethan Hawke, playing a vampire unfortunate enough to be named Edward. He would have rather died than become a vampire, 'cause he's not like the other boys. So his soldier brother turned him to, keep him from dying. Because that is what's happened to pretty much the rest of humanity. In a dickish move of vampire supremacy, they've eliminated all human rights and keep every human they can find in these body farms to use as a blood supply. So here, instead of the romantic outsider that the vampire had become in recent decades, the vampires are now the oppressive, privileged majority, leeching dry the poor, lower rungs of society. Again. when you subvert a trope that was already a subversion of the original metaphor, are you really being that clever? Or just taking it back to where it started? You come to our country and don't assimilate? Then you deserve to be used and abused to make the rich richer. Who cares if it was technically never originally our country in the first place? The problem for these vampires is there's nowhere near enough humans left to sustain their blood needs. By the far distant future year 2019, they're facing the imminent complete extinction of the human race. And if they don't drink human blood, they start devolving into these mindless bat Nosferatu monsters called subsiders. Oof. Definitely not the glamorous vampire lifestyle they all signed up for. Not only is literal humanity dwindling, but so is everyone's sense of humanity as they indulge their greed. See what happens when you spend your years of supremacy focusing on accumulating wealth and developing cool vampire-adapted cityscapes and fancy camera cars and not paying attention to preserving your natural resources? Silly vampires! How short-sighted of you! Back when this movie came out, the Allegory was often read to be about society's negligence causing the fossil fuel crisis. But nowadays, in the actual far-distant future year of 2019, the metaphor is much more topically applicable to climate change. As the dominant species on this planet, we are foolishly killing it off. And if we don't change our behavior immediately, there won't be any habitable planet left for our immediate descendants.
What I'm saying is the planet's on fucking fire. But you're adults now, and this is an actual crisis.
Learn from the silly vampires before it's too late. Who am I kidding? It's already too late. Our planet is doomed. But hey, the vampires in Daybreakers still have hope. Reluctant vampire Edward works for a company that's trying to develop a blood substitute so that they no longer need humans. And he also longs for a cure. Even though he's not into being a vampire, for most people, it's pretty great. They've well worked out how to build their world to handle the whole pesky sunlight turning them into torches thing, and the immortality is extra cool for people like Ed's Sam Neill boss, who was dying of cancer before he became a vampire.
Besides, what's the cure?
And, actually that seems to be about it. From what we see, these vampires live pretty much normal human-style lives, just at night instead. Besides the immortality, they don't seem to have any cool vampire powers. Or maybe they do, but super strength or whatever else they might have is pointless when everyone in the world has it.
And when everyone's super, no one will be.
Still, immortality is a pretty tempting perk to joining the dark side when for most people the only price they have to pay is giving up daylight and drinking a cupful of human blood mixed in their coffee every so often. It's not like they have to go around biting and hurting people to get it, and most of them willfully turn a blind eye to where their blood comes from. Just as much of humanity in the real world chooses to do when it comes to the unsavory aspects of the factory farm meat industry. And not to mention the vegetarian farming industry, building its profits on the backs of human rights violations. The film shows us one child vampire in the prologue who kills herself because she can't bear immortality, never being able to grow up. But most vampires think they've got it made in the shade, until the scary truth about how they've squandered their natural resources hits them. The fact that most of the global population could so easily unperson humans, a people they used to be part of, is a cynical statement about the fuck you, I got mine mentality that permeates much of contemporary political attitudes, especially among people of privilege. How often do we hear tell of someone who used to lean liberal when they were young and broke, turn conservative and bigoted once they got old and rich? Have you known a few? Even though it's an Australian film masquerading as American, I don't think it's random that the only vampire aside from Ed who we see even caring about the treatment of humankind is the only vampire of color in the film. course, he gets killed off, along with the only other POC character who has any speaking lines. But both of these men die for their grassroots effort to restore human rights and protections, fighting for a cure. Ed's research scientist partner and his boss aren't interested in a cure, though. In a commentary on the greed of the pharmaceutical industry and the capitalist perpetuation of consumerism in general, the film has them point out that if the vampires turn back human, there will be no one left to buy their blood substitute.
It's never been about a cure. It's about repeat business.
As resources disappear, the individual consumers, vampires in society, are pressured to conserve, ration blood to deal with the problem. But this only makes life harder for them as they deteriorate into subsiders who are then disposed of, when the onus should be entirely on the corporations farming humans on a mass scale to solve the crisis. Drinking your blood without a plastic straw isn't going to do anything to stop pollution without much larger structural change happening at the government regulation level. Ed does discover the cure, though, with the help of Willem Dafoe, who plays a former vampire turned back human by a freak sunlight accident. They recreate the accident and turn Ed human. Then, when his evil capitalist boss bites him, he turns human too, in a reverse zombie effect that has the potential to cure the whole world just as fast as vampirism initially spread. As Ed's soldier brother is the only person in this film with a character arc, he sacrifices himself to get the cure ball rolling. And it seems like it's working, but then all the cured people at the end get abruptly gunned down by Ed's scientist partner, who only cares about profit.
It can't be a cure. I can't let you do it.
All that sacrifice for nothing. Yeah, taking down an entire extortionist system isn't easy. It's almost as if it's impossible to affect things like climate change on an individual level, and being told to do so only serves as a distraction technique to keep people from realizing that if corporations and governments don't start sacrificing profit in order to take responsibility for the planet's health and natural resources, nothing will ever improve. Ed and friends aren't deterred, though, driving off into the sunrise, planning to try again and somehow heal the world.
We can change you back. It's not too late.
So maybe there's hope? As we are shown that the cure depends on enough cured humans getting bitten without being completely eaten alive as the vampires devolve into the crazed, bloodlusty subsiders, and the rather small percentage of success, it's clear that even if a solution will be reached, it's going to take a lot of hard work, and most people won't survive to see the results. Just like with our dumpster fire of a real world. But that doesn't mean we still shouldn't put in that hard work. The real work that matters. Like with ballots. Because if we don't, we all perish.
Vampires can never survive. That's the truth. Elvis Presley once said, "Truth is like the sun. You can shut it off for a time, but it ain't going away."
Yeah, the sun always comes back and scorches the earth with heat that can't escape because of the greenhouse gases. For these vampires, immortality is as much of a delusion as it is for us in the equally short-sighted real world. All the wealth and power won't matter if we starve or roast or freeze to death as the planet dies. I am the Maven of the Eventide, and as awesome as vampires are, a whole world full of them wouldn't do anyone any good. So, get out and face the day ball and use your vote to fight climate change and the for-profit healthcare industry and stuff. Please.
We're not making music for aliens here. Are we gonna die? You know what, Bieber? We might die. I'm not gonna lie to you. There's so many people out there who don't think global warming's a real thing. We gotta save this planet. We're being stupid.
Unless we get our shit together now.
Thank you for watching this video, and thank you to my Patreon patrons for supporting Vampire Reviews. You may notice that I have a little something special out tonight. Yeah, it's my book. Because guess what? There's news. The Company of Death, by me, Elisa Hansen, is coming out in audiobook very soon, May 31st. You will be able to buy The Company of Death in audio from Audible or wherever you like to download audiobooks from. Use your credits. If you've bought an audiobook from there before, they will have Company of Death. There will also be CDs if you are a person who likes physical media, a 9 CD set, or an MP3 CD. Yeah. No, the audiobook is not narrated by my little spawn here, but she will drool on your copy if that's what you're into, because guess what? We are going to be at Con Carolinas in Charlotte, North Carolina, May 31st to June 2nd. Come out and see us. We will be on panels talking about new media and YouTube and vampires and all sorts of awesome stuff. And I will also be selling and autographing The Company of Death at the Falstaff Books booth. You want to meet some friends at Con Carolinas? The link is in the description. My fledgling spawn has been practicing her blah, haven't you? Say blah, 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 blah.